I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the many lands on which we meet today, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. This webinar is designed with the chat function on Zoom enabled for those using a screen reader wanting to ask a question of our guest. Use keystroke Alt-H to bring up the chat window, then type your question in for us and I will direct it to our speaker. Have a look and see. Yep, we've got a number starting us off. So what I'll do is I'll introduce our guest at this time. He's a television and film producer, business consultant, and speaker. He began his career in the entertainment industry as a blindness consultant, teaching sighted actors how to accurately portray blind characters. He's obviously worked on a number of different TV and film projects. However, his first huge role as a blindness consultant was teaching actors such as Charlie Cox in the Netflix series Daredevil, moving on to Jason Momoa in the Apple TV series C, and working his way up to co-executive producer in the second season. He's also heavily involved in landing a role of the associate producer on the Golden Globe nominated Netflix miniseries out on the moment, All the Light We Cannot See, starring Aria Maria Liberti, Mark Ruffalo, and Hugh Laurie, to name a few. Beneath the glitz and glamour, and of obviously brushing shoulders with Hollywood's elite, he's a tireless, enthusiastic advocate for disability inclusion, representation, and employment in the entertainment industry. I personally think the world of the work he's doing in the world, and I couldn't be more thankful to welcome our guest, Joe Strechay, for joining us today from his home in West Virginia in the United States. Joe, thank you for joining us, mate.
It's a great pleasure, and thank you for having me. And hello to everyone checking in. It's so. I'm blessed to be here.
So you've obviously had quite the storied career thus far. In fact, I had to shorten that a fair bit. So we, while I was doing your intro, can you start us a little bit? Can you start by telling us a little bit about your early life?
Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, in like the Northeast, like near New York City, for all you all in Australia. So like 20 miles west of New York City. And I grew up there. Had a learning disability growing up. Had a hard time learning to read, like even before finding out about my visual impairment, and struggled to learn to read. And then they figured out I had a learning disability, and some key moments around that kind of impacted things. But yeah, and around when I was like in fifth grade, I was 11. My mom was like 42, 43. We both found out that we had a visual impairment.
So you both found out at the same time. How did that sort of play out? That must have been pretty heavy for, were you in 15, did you say?
Oh, 11.
11, 11. That must have been pretty heavy for both of you.
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't totally grasp it, like the it wasn't impacting me tremendously. I couldn't see at night at the time. I knew things were my vision wasn't good, and it didn't seem to be getting better. And my mom was having similar issues, and but like yeah, I noticed like over time, as time went on, colors started kind of like fading into each other, and I was losing like color vision, and then things started popping out at me. Like my field of vision got smaller, like posts and stuff. I was like, "Whoa, I didn't see that there."
Yeah.
And yeah, but early on, like it didn't impact me too much, and I didn't actually get the like. Yeah, I tell you more like about the education side of it.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask, because obviously the eyes have this amazing ability to adjust when you are losing sight, and so you don't kind of, it's not in the forefront of your mind sometimes. Was it the case with yourself? Was it just something that I just don't see very well at night, and you just kind of pushed it to the back of your mind, or
Yeah, it definitely. Yeah, like I know my night vision wasn't good, and it was just getting worse and worse. And but like overall, it wasn't impacting my life outside of that. I was playing sports. I was active. I was wrestling and playing basketball. Then later American football. And but as my during my high school years, it started to kind of like be more noticeable and um, like playing sports. I couldn't play baseball because I couldn't follow the ball. I, like it got more and more difficult, and yeah, in that realm, and I didn't know what everyone else could see. I remember even thinking about that. I'm like, maybe this is how everyone sees, like not truly grasping and understanding what was going on. And I didn't get services around my blindness in school. It was on my like our we have our an IEP in the States, individual education program or plan, and I had that my learning disability, I had my visual impairment, but I didn't get anything for my visual impairment. And but I remember in like high school trying to just I couldn't drive. Like I legally was able to drive for 2 years,
yeah,
and but I wouldn't drive at night because like I really couldn't see well enough. And I thought that was strange. And I remember going to an eye doctor's appointment when I was like 18. I went alone and drove there, and the eye doctor at the end of the appointment said, I think you're going to be totally blind by the time you're 25. And he walked out of the room. And he's like, and he's like, oh, and pay up front and schedule your next appointment. And I was like
thanks.
shock, shock.
Yeah,
And I was like, so that's like 7 years from now. And like I was playing sports, I was competitive in that. Um, I saw that, but I remember just being really shocked and upset. And once I got outside, basically collapsing and crying, and being like, I didn't know what blindness looked like. I didn't think I knew people who were blind or low vision. Um, you know, I and I worked at a video store, and I know, but so like television and film were important to me, and so I was like, oh, what about what movies and stuff? What does blindness look like? And
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's, I wouldn't normally sort of get too quickly into that line of questioning, but as yourself, you're a tireless advocate. So I'm
Mhm.
sure you're fairly comfortable talking about it. But far as the actual, you know, getting into, you're working at a video store as your first role, as your first job, obviously that might have been a potential indicator that you were destined to move into the entertainment industry. Were there other sort of signs that you were
Yeah.
coming into that line of work?
I was definitely obsessed with sports, movies, television. Um, and I don't know if I totally put it all together. I loved, um, yeah, I guess the video store, and I also would help edit video for like sports teams and stuff. That my once I finished playing football, my coach, he's now the offensive coordinator for one of the big colleges in the U.S. here. He's a football coach, American football coach, and at the time, though, in high school, he was a young guy. And he got me involved with other stuff, like the business side of sports, and helping him with stuff, and kind of was like an assistant to him um, during free periods, and got to meet all these other coaches. And so he was like, maybe you won't be playing football, but you could work with sports and stuff. So I was like, okay, that's cool. I would dig that. And but as I was going on, I definitely I took some film classes in college, and and I kept thinking about it. It just seemed far off, the idea of being part of TV and movies. I would love to have been like had that as my goal, but it just seemed too exclusive. Like that was not going to happen for me.
It sounds a little bit like you were kind of still working yourself out like a normal
Hmm.
teenager, really, thinking
Yes,
about what you were going to
definitely.
do. And obviously, I don't have the direct statistics for the states, but the worldwide percentages for people that are blind in employment is like makes for kind of dire reading. It's like 30% employed.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep. You're,
and it sounds a little bit like your coach might have been prepping you a little bit for that.
Yeah, definitely. He was a mentor. My parents always believed in work and instilled that into us at an early age. So I worked 4 years at that video store. I worked multiple jobs in my senior year of high school, and like work was something I loved. It didn't matter whether I was, cleaning a store or even a fitness center, like cleaning it, cleaning
Yeah,
the bathrooms, whatever it was. I put myself into it, and really I enjoyed that because when it came down to it, I enjoyed getting paid as well. So yeah.
yeah, I can relate to that. So you're a teenager looking to forge your way in the world. After you finished school, you were doing a bit of, a bit of work in management for sport. Did you go into study as well, or did you look for employment
I,
at this point,
I did.
getting
I,
that
I, I
that
was
eyesight?
I was going into study, and I'm going to university, and my first semester in university at this school called East Carolina University. It's in the state of North Carolina in the U.S. And my first semester, I lost most of my vision, and I was legally blind, and I didn't have like the skills like that I should have or needed.
Yeah,
And and again, like I got depressed. I didn't have a good outlook, and I found counseling through and support. And so like I'm a big believer in like mental health counseling and counseling in general, and adjustment to vision loss and all those things. But I found that like not every counselor, it's not one size fits all, because
yeah,
you have to trust that person to be able to really share your feelings. And but I did find the right person, and it changed my outlook on life, on disability, on my vision. Um, and I started asking doctor, I was asking a doctor about it, about like rehab and like learning how to use the white cane. And they were like, nah, how about a night vision optic? That would be really good for you. I'm like, I hear good things about that, other stuff. And they're like, yeah, nah. And so I tried the night vision optic, did not work. And
yeah.
I, I, I contacted like the services in that state where I was living, and they came out and met with me, and they're like telling me, oh, orientation mobility will come out and train you with the white cane and stuff like that. And they would schedule appointments, and not show up. Like one, two, three, and I'm like, after three times, I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm like, I guess it's not happening. I guess I was memorizing my path around my campus, like 20,000 students, using my feet to clear my way, going on dates and stuff, and would once in a while show up at a date, and I might have run into my nemesis, a fire hydrant, on the way down there,
Yeah, yeah,
like these metal, I don't know. Did you call them fire hydrants in Australia?
yeah. Well, fire
Okay.
extinguishers, yeah, same thing. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
fire
yeah.
hydrants are the water. Yeah,
Sidewalk.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Same thing.
So
Yeah.
I ended up on a date, like, and I had blood dripping down my leg from under my
Oh,
pants because I hit a fire hydrant on the way there, and having to explain to people, and I didn't know how to talk about my vision, and I would tell people I was open about it overall, but I didn't know how to explain the aspects and how I do things, and but their disability student services introduced me to a lot of technology, and that started opening up and help. I wouldn't have been successful in college if it wasn't for that, and that made a difference, and I made it through school, and I got out and ended up getting blindness services after college in New Jersey, like how to use the white cane, Braille, technology, then other just adaptive techniques and strategies.
Yeah. And I imagine that probably that story obviously would have made a big difference in wanting to give back in that sector as well, because I know that you went into doing some
Mhm.
work in assistive technology and continue to campaign for it as well.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
was that something that just you went actively looking for, or was it just somebody got in your ear and went, you should come and teach?
got in my it got in my ear. I took a job. I was running into walls, trying to like barriers, obstacles. I was applying for jobs with like in including NBC, like in the States, one of the big TV networks.
Yeah.
I was made it a final round of these interviews, and I would always make it to final rounds, but I would never get the job. And I, uh, I was definitely not good about talking about my vision loss and my I was legally blind, low vision, and it continued to lose vision, and I wasn't good about talking about it. I wasn't comfortable with myself. So if you're not comfortable with talking about yourself and who you are, the employer is not going to be really comfortable with you either. And I wish I had known that at that time, like how to do that and like how to talk about blindness and all those things and how I can do things versus getting stumbling over it and getting uncomfortable. Because if I'm uncomfortable, they're not going to be comfortable. And so I ended up, yeah, going into the blindness world, working. My graduate work was around all around blindness from Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida, in the states. And but then I worked in like a bunch of different areas of the blindness world. But really, um, and and I can tell you where the road started leading me back to entertainment years down the line.
Yeah, well, obviously you speak quite openly about the fact that it was tricky for you to go on into interviews. As far as the entertainment industry goes, and you mentioned NBC and that sort of thing, was it something that did you know of anybody else that was with sight loss or anything like that was looking at that sector at all, working in your field? Did anyone come and sit down with you and go, "Hey, look, Joe, I'd love to become a producer or an actor," or was there anything like that?
No, no, I didn't know people like I like really. So I was trying to like get my foot in the door and figure out how I do that. And I got opportunities, but I just could never land it. And getting feedback from others about it. And really, I guess I didn't know people who were blind that were doing anything like that at that point. And there were a few out there in the world, but I just didn't know of them. Yeah.
And you've obviously worked across multiple industries, um, and you would know as well that going into an interview like this for a job that has the potential to empower you so much in life, that must have been really, really hard to get those knockbacks.
Definitely, definitely. You know, I was like, I guess it's not going to happen. And I went in. I wanted to make money, so I went in for a substitute teaching job in like school, and they offered me a full time job as a teacher's assistant. And then I ended up working with two students who were blind or low vision. Besides, they were just part of the students that I met there. But I got to meet the professionals who worked with them too, so network with them, and I'm like, huh, I could do that. Yeah, and then people were convincing me that education was the place to be, and I loved education and all, and I still do a lot with schools and students. But really, film and television is where I want to be, and where I really would have loved to have been at that time. Um, and I just didn't see it as a road that I could go, and I was like, I guess that's not for me. Later on, I ended up working on an organization called at the time they were called American Foundation for the Blind,
Yeah.
and they had this program called Career Connect, Um, and it's now with the American Printing House for the Blind in their Connect Center. But it was all about employment, and they brought me on to write a curriculum about employment and navigating the employment process. And but at night, I was as a like kind of hobby to do something besides writing about employment. I was writing about television and film, and like uh, blindness and disability, and I was interviewing prominent people who are blind or low vision that were in the media as well, and talking to them and becoming friends with them. And as I was writing all these pieces, I started getting contacted by documentaries seeking people who are blind or low vision to connect with them, so to help them connect them. Commercials who were casting people who are blind or low vision, and I was helping them connect with people. I was like, oh, that's cool, neat, just neat. And and then another show, a show called Royal Pains that was on the USA Network in the States. It's a show about a doctor who was originally a prince or something. I've never actually watched the show, but I
Yeah.
worked with their writers' room on 3 episodes for free. I didn't get paid. I on the lingo because they were introducing a character who's blind, and so they built my language and slang around blindness and the situations in the scripts into the story. And I was like, okay, that's neat. I would love to do more of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was cool.
So, obviously, the topic of this webinar is around representation in mainstream media. Did you see too, like, generally what I'd ask in this particular point in time is who were your muses that you were looking at as you were looking to forge your own way into that field? Was there anyone that stood out, or did you have characters that were blind or low vision that you could even associate with at that time?
I would say I grew up like reading Marvel's Daredevil, the comic book as a kid. I grew up with that as an interest, and pretty much watching any film that I could find that involved blindness or vision loss or anything like that. So I remember watching like Son of the Woman at First Sight with Val Kilmer and being like, "Am I supposed to be like that? Like, is that what I'm supposed to be like?" And I'm like, "I don't think that's me." And Ben Affleck's the Fox Daredevil, and I'm like, like it was disjointed in how the film was put together, which was nothing against really the acting. It just felt like they try. Anyway, I'm getting real technical with that part, but I saw what I liked and what I didn't like, and I would take note of it in general and critique it, and sometimes write about it publicly, sometimes privately. Just
Yeah.
having notes on different shows and films anytime there was a character. And I was watching reality shows and connecting. Like Christine Ha was on Master Chef
Yeah.
season 3 in the States here, Gordon Ramsay's show, and I connected with her while she was on it and while filming it, and interviewed her. And my friend at the time, he was a role model from before. It was Eric Weimeyer, who summited Mount Everest and the highest peak on each continent,
Yeah.
and this adventure. And I read his books like in grad school and before and after that, and about him summiting Mount Everest. And I started connecting with him and interviewed him, and we became like at first it was like he kind of gave me advice and stuff, uh, and he was on TV. He was on this reality adventure show called Expedition Impossible.
Yeah.
So I also wrote about that. But I can't say I knew anyone working in the TV film side, but they had been on reality shows, and I was like, oh, that's cool and neat. But then I as I'm like helping on these other shows, I'm like, most of the people that are doing that work around blindness in TV and film are sighted people, and I was like, I knew about who was doing that work. I started to learn about those people, and I'm like, but I live it every day, and I'm like, I have the expertise, my graduate work, and I train thousands of people who are blind or low vision in different types of skills like travel and orientation mobility and other things and technology and daily living skills. And I'm like, I think I might offer something. I was thinking about that. And we got contacted by this very secretive show. And they're like, and I'm like, is this a reality show? Is there a person who, or is there an actor who's blind on this show?
Yeah.
I wasn't, they wouldn't say. And I'm like, I can't help you unless you give me more information. So I ended up creating their job description for them. And it turned out to be Marvel's Daredevil. And I helped them recruit people to interview for it. And at the end of that process, they were like, Joe, why don't you interview for this? And I'm like, I have a job already. I'm like, I don't live in New York. Uh, and they're like, come up and interview for it. So I guess I was like the last interview, and I flew up to New York and went and met with the director, executive producers, and as they're creating the show. And my first question was, is the actor blind? And they're like,
Yeah.
no. Like they're like, you'll know who he is pretty soon if you do some searches. And beginning, I didn't even know it was Daredevil. Like they were so secretive. And then I learned, and I was in the fold, and so I'm up there in the meeting with them, and the next day they're like, "Well, we really, really like you." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's nice." They're like, "But tomorrow, if you come back, you're going to meet with the lead actor, Charlie Cox." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And and if he likes you, uh, then you're going to get the job. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "I have a job," so I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing here." Uh, and so the first that day I wore a suit, and they're like, "That's pretty perfect because Matt Murdock is a lawyer and he wears a suit." But they're like, "But tomorrow when you meet with Charlie, don't wear that. Be dressed more casual." I'm like, they're like, "In film we dress more casual." I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay, I could do that." So the next day I come back and I meet with him, and I'm talking to him, and he's asking me questions, and I'm like, I'll train you just like I've trained other people who are blind or low vision. I'm going to teach you the skills that people who are blind or low vision use. Well, people who are blind, your character is blind. And so and he's like, let's start working now. And I'm like, I whisper to the people outside, I'm like, does it mean I have the job? And they're
Does
like,
this mean he likes me?
I'm like, I don't, I'm like, am I allowed to do this? So we start training, and I have sleep shade. I believe in sleep shade training in general. Like, so you're relying on your other senses, and whether you're low vision or blind. And so we start training and going through and navigating and some basics like introduction indoor travel. And I systematic about it. And so I worked with him for a few hours that day, and then we just scheduled time like every. Oh, I moved up there. They offered me the job, and I had to figure out how I was going to do it. So I was staying with family in different places. My twin brother and his at the time fiance and or maybe girlfriend, I don't know. And then I think it was girlfriend at the time. And then wait, were they married? Oh, yeah, they were married. And then I didn't think about it. What year it was? 2013, 14. So I met with, I ended up taking it, and I slept on couches, and I didn't make a lot of money because I didn't know what to ask for. So they, and Marvel was pretty well known for not, for being very frugal. Um, but I didn't know what to ask for. So I definitely was underpaid, but I was kind of learning what I was doing. And I worked with the lead actor, the child version. I worked on all the scripts for season one, um, providing suggestions. I didn't write them. I just gave suggestions of changes and things that could be built in. And then with the set decoration and props, as well, and like Matt Murdock's apartment. My expertise is not superheroes, so it was more about Matt Murdock and when Matt Murdock was being Matt Murdock, or when he was not using his superpowers. I got to be there for some of the superpower stuff, but mostly it was about him living his everyday life, and the child version as well. Skylar Gartner, who later on is Jonah in Ozark. Um, they were great to work with, and I would still say Charlie Cox is probably one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. Yeah.
He looks it. And I have to say, I kind of commend you on your muses, Christine Ha and Eric
Oh
Weinmeier.
yeah.
Both met. They're
Oh yeah.
fantastic people. So
Dude.
I can relate to that. I guess the question, as you said, it sounds a lot like it was just as much of a roller coaster as you described, that sort of application process. And there wasn't really, I mean, what was a blindness consultant at that point in time? Was there anything like, I don't know if there is even a job description, I'd imagine.
Oh, I wrote the job description
You
for
wrote the
them.
job description. There you go.
When and help them recruit the people, and like a mix of people who are blind or low vision and sighted folks. People, some were like PhDs, and some were had worked on other shows, and but yeah, I they yeah, when it came down to it, they liked me, and they liked, I guess, my attitude. I don't know. Also, maybe I don't know, because I had knowledge of the comic book. I had quite a bit of
Yeah.
knowledge, and in there. And I told him what I didn't like in the Fox Daredevil movie, the Ben Affleck one. I told him in detail like what I didn't like about it, and
Yeah. You probably had a
and
lot of time to think about that too.
I did, I did, I did. I
Did you have a part to play in any of the, because Netflix has become quite the front runner for audio description and things like that as well, but I can't recall too much of that prior to this series. Did you
yeah,
have a part to play in that as well?
I can't say I asked them like, is it gonna be their audio described? And they're like, oh, that's not us. And I would ask Charlie, and Charlie kept asking, and he kept asking for them to audio describe, and they were building out the ability for Netflix. So, and I have to say, the consumer groups lobbying got it fast tracked. They had already been working on it,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to, but it was not on launch. So when the consumer groups raised heck, which helped us and helped me, because I was like, yeah, uh,
Now I know what's
Marvel's
going on
Daredevil
too.
was the first one, and I was testing it as they're launching it on different devices and ways, and telling them like, oh, this one's not working properly, this track on this episode, and so they were building it out, and it got to be the first show launched with audio description. I did not help on the audio description at all, but definitely I kept asking about it, and Charlie really, I would say, was a big proponent and pushed for it, which I feel lucky, because yeah, and the consumer groups for sure fast tracked it and made it happen quicker, and I'm all for that. More access, the better. And I love audio description. It's how I access all my media, and it makes such a big impact.
So we've reached just over the halfway mark of today's webinar. Just a reminder for people wanting to get their questions in, if you're using a screen reader, the keystroke is Alt H to bring up the chat window, then type your question in, and I will direct it to our guest. So talking once again, going online, we're going a little bit further with your first role. So you wrote the job description teaching, you know, I mean, you probably were teaching blind and low vision people the same skill set, but you obviously, this was your first role teaching sighted actors how to portray blind characters. Obviously, an amazing opportunity for you and somewhat uncharted territory. But what were some of the advantages you believe benefited you most in excelling in this role?
Yeah, I think my attitude, a lot of, I'm easygoing, but I was willing to speak up, and I guess yeah, and every job I've done in entertainment, television, film, I share a lot of myself with those people and how I do things, but other people's experiences too. It's not just my point of view; it's also research and based, and I'm creative, so I think of different ways things can be done or shown, or what might look good, which is interesting as a person who's blind, like thinking about the visual aspect of it in the medium, which that's what TV is and film, but other ways it can be done. And it's cool. And getting to work with actors, getting to work with the actors, but the script writers, and Charlie's so considerate in general, so he wanted to make sure he was doing it right. And we spent so much time working under Sleep Shade, but besides that, he also filmed me doing things. So he built my mannerisms into Matt Murdock, and like how him and Foggy do a fist bump. That was because I love the fist bump. You can reach out with your fist, they grab it. Handshakes can sometimes be a little awkward. You do
Yeah.
the directness and initiate it, it goes better, but still sometimes that grasp gets a little weird. Um, yeah, so it was cool. It was cool, and getting to impact how that was seen. And at that time, and I'm like, okay, I guess you know. The this is what it is. Sighted folks portraying it. I'm like, okay. I'm like, and so I worked on season one, and it was nice, and I helped a little bit here and there on season two, like just. Charlie would ask me questions about or ask for videos, and I did such a good job on season one that they felt very comfortable. I made all these videos of what to watch for and what to look for in different situations. I kind of put myself out of a job a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I kept going on my work in life, and I ended up working on another show called the OA, also on Netflix. Britt Marling, a person who cited this super smart woman. She wrote the show with her friend and is the lead actor, and it's another science fiction show. And but I got to put in, and she's very into experiencing things. So we would spend like 8 hours under Sleep Shade, wandering around either like the Village in New York City or Jersey City, New Jersey, like wandering around and doing lessons. And she wouldn't take her sleep shade off at all, and doing cooking and cleaning and all kinds of things. And she ended up building some of the stuff we did together into the scripts, like the meal she eats with this. Uh, anyway, it's because we ate that meal together in Jersey City, but in the show it's in Grand Central. But we did a whole bunch of stuff, and it was cool. And I helped with set decoration and props and the child version. And they didn't have their prop canes in time, so my canes are the canes being used in that show because they couldn't get them in time, and Britt was comfortable with them. So yeah, it was fun, and I'm like, okay, that was cool. Um,
Did you think while you were doing this, obviously you have platform, a fantastic opportunity to encourage more frequent representation of
mhm,
people with disability. But did you
mhm.
think, behind the scenes a little bit respectfully, as
Yeah,
you said, doing yourself out of a bit of a job here, getting training professional actors, did you think to yourself, why not just get a blind actor or a blind to play a blind character? Is that something that crossed your mind a fair bit, I imagine?
no, it definitely was in my mind. It was in my mind from the beginning, and but yeah, it definitely was in my thoughts and mind, and I got to know more and see more. Because I didn't really know how a film set worked until Marvel's Daredevil, and then
Yeah.
the OA and so on, and always my question was, is the actor going to be blind, or are you going to hire people who are blind?
Yeah.
And later on, Apple TV Plus, Apple comes Francis Lawrence, who directed 4 out of 5 Hunger Game films, and he was executive producer for C, and worked with Stephen Knight, the creator, and they built a show together. And I'm interviewing with them, and when they had like 9 people working on the show, and they're like, my first question was like, "Are you guys going to hire people who are blind or low vision?" And they said yes. And I'm like, "Oh." I'm like, yes. I'm like, I 100% want to be a part of this. And so I started working with them on the scripts, and they didn't know what they needed either. And if C is you know, a world like basically happening right about now, a viral apocalypse happens, and most people die, and we're down to like 2 or 3 million people left on Earth, and all of those folks emerge blind. And then our show took place like a few hundred years later, after different societies and civilizations were built out. And they were like, we're going to hire people who are blind or low vision, but we're also going to have some prominent actors, Jason Momoa, Alfre Woodard, and all those. And getting to help as they built the show. And I didn't know what they were going to, I was like suggesting things, and it started to realize this is like a full-time job. I'm like, uh, and I'm like talking to them about it, and they're talking about where they're going to film, and it almost ended up in like South Africa or Georgia in the US, or but we ended up in Vancouver, Canada. But I ended up leaving my other job to go do that, and I had to make that decision, like gamble, to go and take this. And I learned from each job I've had what to ask for, what I could get monetarily, but like otherwise. And I over time, like season one of C, my friends were the showrunners, Dan Schatz and John Steinberg, who also are the showrunners for Percy Jackson and The Old Man and these other shows now. And they really coached me on like down the line, and they really cared about like what I was saying. And my job, we kind of developed out over season one. Like, so by episode 4, the director was asking me to be right next to him and block every scene with him. And I had an assistant who described every take, like
Yeah.
audio describes every take on set.
Yeah.
But and I as I was working with people to build out the culture, like they used like movements that were from consumer conventions or from Paralympics, and built that into our army movements. And but I also got to help cast people, recruit people, background performers, actors, and we had over 3 seasons, we had like 35 or 36 actors who are blind or low vision. Most of those, like 20 of them, like in recurring roles, so multiple episodes. We had hundreds of people in background over 3 seasons, who are blind or low vision, and other disabilities in it too. We had people who are deaf or hard of hearing, shorter stature. And during season one, I was like, we have to make this accessible for these people if we're bringing them here. So I took on the accessibility side of the show as well, like how to make it accessible, the production and all that. And if you know anything about Apple, they want to make sure they're doing it right. So they definitely were there to help, and they were committed to it. And I have a close relationship with Apple, and because of it, and definitely earned their trust. So first season I was associate producer, and then co-producer, co-executive producer, and I just kept moving up and learning more and more. And so season 2, I was overseeing all the background like movements and how we develop out those culture, and with these choreographers, and working with our amazing ADs as well, like to help design what's going on, and these getting to make different tribes and their movements and how they did things differently. And then working with the director, obviously, to block every scene with those actors who were talented, and getting to bring in these actors who are blind or low vision, who may not have had the opportunity to be on TV or film at that time. And like Shayla Brown was, I think she was 17 when we first cast her, and then she after that landed Women Talking. They developed a part out for her, and she's going to have a long uh, future, a long career in television and film. She's out of Toronto. She's now like, she's got to be 20. All right. Yeah. And all these actors getting to see them do their work. And when I was working on season 2 or 3, actually, I think it was 2, I got contacted by Sean Levy and this guy, Dan Levine, who were the executive producers. They're like, we got this book called All the Light We Cannot See. We heard from 3 different sources that you're the person we should talk to. Um, I was like, who said that? They're like Stephen Knight. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I know him well. And then they said Jonathan Tropper, who was our season 2 and 3 showrunner. He worked with Sean on Adam Project. Jonathan wrote Adam Project for Sean and them. And then Netflix because of Marvel's Daredevil and the OA and all that. And so they're like, uh, it was such an adventure going into All the Light We Cannot See as well.
So obviously you've provided a rather good segue for that. And we did have a question from Susie in regards to supporting and advocating people who are blind or low vision to play characters in American soap operas and such. Tell us a little bit about how Aria was cast in All the Light We Cannot See.
Great question. And we cast Aria, Mia Liberty, and Nell Sutton. Actually, cast Nell Sutton from Wales, who was 7 years old at the time first.
Yeah, playing the younger
And
version of the character, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I helped with the casting search worldwide, Australia, New Zealand included. And I was reviewing all these auditions, and I kind of had to be a little detective because, when it came down to Arya's part, everyone wants to be a lead in a show. So anyone who wore glasses said they were legally blind or low vision. So I had to figure out who was actually legally blind or low vision.
Right.
Um, and we're going through all these auditions, and without asking like directly, I had to use context clues or ask questions that would give me more information. And we had thousands of auditions from people who are blind or low vision, actually people who are blind or low vision, and for both of those roles. And finding Nell, and I remember it being down to like 2 people basically for Nell's role, and then we just fell in love with Nell. Nell was so cute, and I got to work a week with her in Wales, like go through what the day to day on in film with my assistant and I, Kara Lee Herlichka, who's out of Vancouver. One of my the assistants I've used, who's a choreographer who could audio describe and everything, and we worked with her for like a week, and she ended up getting the role, and we were psyched. But Aria, like this is what Aria was meant to do. She had never auditioned before. An orientation mobility instructor from when she was a kid sent her the link to the
Yeah.
casting
Not
search
a traditional
and
actress at
suggest
all. Yeah.
no, she was an academic. Ari was getting her in her PhD program at Penn State University, which wasn't far from me. Like once we found Aria, and she was the one. Like this part was meant for her, and she was meant to be an actor, and she's so talented. And so I took a bus like 2 hours away to go meet with her. I was the first person from production to meet with her in person. I went up and spent time with her and talked about what a film set's like, how it works, and all that. She got the scripts right then. Like she is amazing. Love her, and just such a kind person. And she's doing what she's meant to do, and she's gonna have a long career in TV and film.
And I noticed at the Golden Globes, you obviously received a nomination at the Golden Globes, and
Mhm.
we saw a dog guide on the red carpet for the first time. There must have been a bit of a pinch me moment for yourself there as well.
That's amazing. Like Arya, just having that representation in general, like she is changing the world by being there, but also having the voice she has, and she's so bright and articulate, sharing what her experience has been, and getting to see a guide dog on the red carpet for the Golden Globes, and I know we will see her in many more red carpets down the line. It's Yeah, it's the real deal. This is what we've been working for, and for a long time, and as we're moving, and it's a process, and but we're making some big strides right now.
So obviously you've been in the industry for quite a while now, and you've seen lots of changes during that time, and you've kind of gone through a lot of them. I guess the next question as we're getting close to wrapping up is going to be uh, what's happening for yourself in the next 12 months? What can you talk about?
Yeah, I'm working on a couple projects. We had some strikes that stopped them for a little while, for a number of months, but back on again. I'm actually working on some like an animation project, two animation projects, and one big one small one, and but cool. And got to cast for the small one. This indie animation project is a feature film. Uh, got to cast the lead actor as the voice of it is a person who's blind, and which is awesome, and psyched about that. An actor I've worked with in the past. Um, yeah, and getting to help cast other shows. So I've helped cast for Paramount now, Amazon, Netflix. People trust me, and I've seen a lot of people do work, like people you should watch out for, like Precious Perez Lowe. Her name's not her married name is Lowe, but Precious is outstanding singer, and definitely is going to be nominated for awards down the line for music. But she's also uh,
I think
could
she's
be
registered up with Lucky's group, isn't she?
yeah, she is. She
Yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard of
she
it.
can
Yeah.
act as well. So I suggested her for a Paramount show, one of the spinoffs of Yellowstone, um, and she got that role, and so pretty psyched about that, and that's out in the world. But a number of other shows, and I continue, but I'm also writing my own stuff. I want to create my own shows
Yeah,
that involve disability and blindness, and I want to make sure that I am creating opportunities for people who are blind or low vision,
yeah.
and I work. I'm connected to a lot of other professionals with disabilities, professionals who are blind or low vision in the business, and there's even a smaller amount behind the camera than in front of the camera, which
Yeah.
is crazy to think because there hasn't been many. So getting that opportunity to help open doors is tremendous, and I will continue to do that. And but we gotta make our strides, and you gotta have the experience and the talent. You don't get the experience if you don't get that opportunity. And I think there's some great programs out there making an impact that way too.
So, a question of reflection a little bit here. Being a teenager, learning this information that you're going to be blind, what would you have told yourself, a younger version of yourself with the gift of hindsight here, wanting to get into the entertainment industry? Where would you start?
Yeah, I really would have. Uh, yeah, I definitely would have changed my. If I could have just spoken about myself in a more competent way, and if my skills were better at that time, I think the better you have blindness compensatory skills, the more successful you're going to be. The better you are at articulating and talking about yourself in a way, and what you can do and can't do, and how you do it. And a wise young woman once told me, keep your drama with your mama, so that like medical diagnosis they don't, people, employers don't need to know that. They need to know what you can see, what you can't see, and how you're going to make up for it. Like what technology, and even demonstrating it and showing them, because they don't know what a screen reader is. So if you take out your iPhone and show them how you use voiceover or whatever, um, you know, yeah, I think I don't know if I could have gotten. Yeah, I think all the experiences I went through set me up for what I'm doing now. But and I've earned the street credit in the entertainment business. So these studio heads and different filmmakers know me and believe in me, but also as a filmmaker, they know I understand how film is made and TV and what we're getting in camera. I suggest, like in on C, I would suggest shots, and our director Anders Edstrom for most of season 2 and 3. Him and I are super close. So like we talk about what we could do, what we could do differently, and just accessing film and film. Like I think the world of film is going to change as we get more diverse people, persons with disabilities behind the camera, telling our stories from our experiences, but also making the films in a different way. Because I use hearing, I use description and different things. I might not catch the same things, but I might also catch some other beautiful things.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And look, as I said, you're well aware. I think the world of what you're doing out in the world, and I think we're going to see a lot more actresses and actors coming through. And you've had your finger on the pulse with that and identifying talent, and yeah. So it was yeah. And look, Shelley's come across here saying thank you, Joe. So inspiring to hear your story. And Aria's, it's been an inspirational hour. So
Mm.
yeah, I have to say thank you so much for your time. And I know how busy you are. Well, and we all know how busy you are now. And we greatly appreciate your time and you joining us at such a late hour in the States as well, because I think it'd be now close to 11 o'clock at night, I imagine. So
Yep,
we're
that's
all quite privileged that you're a bit of a night owl.
I'm privileged, and I love Australia, and I haven't been, but I definitely need to come or head to Australia sometime. It's on my wife's bucket list, so we definitely will. And so, thank you for bringing me on, and thank you for all of you guys, because you have a lot of great talent in Australia, filmmakers, but also actors and performers out of there. So I've seen you guys auditioning over the years in my in the different shows, including All the Light. So keep up the work, keep pushing forward.
I think we look forward to welcoming you when you come down under, okay?
Uh, yes, I would love that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I might wrap up there. So thank you to our listeners who have joined us today. Thank you once again to our guest who shared uh, both his story and also his own personal experiences as well. So once again, thank you for joining us. This is the last speaker for our January webinar series. So we will be releasing all of our speakers via YouTube in the coming weeks. But once again, been a fantastic series. And once again, thank you to all of our guests. Uh, Joe, go and get some sleep. We look forward to seeing you soon, mate.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Jordy.
guys.